Good evening, everybody. Welcome to MS Neuro TV, but welcome everybody. I know we have a lot of new registrations and we have a lot of returning guests, so we're happy to have you here. And tonight we're going to be discussing young adults living with MS with Dr. Brian Stein Go. But in the meantime, my name is Jennifer Falk. I am the Director of Development at MS Views and News. And again, welcome to MS Neuro TV, brought to you by MS Views and News. MS Views and News is a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing education and information to the multiple sclerosis community. And before we continue, we'd like to thank our supporters, Sanofi Genzyme, Celgene, and Novartis, and to all of our people like you who are logged on tonight that make educational programs like this possible. Thank you. And today we are here with Dr. Brian Stein Go. He will be joining us, and he has given us his bio, and I'm going to share that with you, some information about Dr. Stein Go. He's practiced neurology in Broward County, Florida since 1980. His practice is limited to the treatment of people living with multiple sclerosis. Dr. Stein Go completed residencies in neurology at the Medical University of South Carolina and Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, where he served as chief resident. Dr. Stein Go has participated in many clinical trials, including the pivotal trials for several drugs now approved for treating multiple sclerosis. And he is actively involved with the National Multiple Sclerosis Society and currently serves as the medical director for MS Views and News. So thank you, Dr. Stein Go. We're very honored to have you join us tonight. And Dr. Stein Go and Stuart Schlossman recently recorded an interview talking about young people living with MS, and we're going to be starting that video in a minute. After the video is done playing, we will be live with Dr. Stein Go for your questions and answers. As you're watching this, please jot down your questions. Anything that comes to your mind, you can share and use the question box on the top right-hand side of your screen. You should see a little orange arrow there. It doesn't have to be a question. If you just want to share a comment or a thought or any perspectives, we're totally open to having you share those. That's the whole point of this. We really want to bring in different perspectives and different conversations. So you're welcome to write whatever you feel is relevant to this conversation, and I'll be happy to share that with Dr. Stein Go and with the group that's on tonight. Okay, and just so all of you know, if you are calling in over the phone and you do not have the video access through your computer, unfortunately, this platform does not allow you to hear the pre-recorded interview. So you will hear some silence while we have that pre-recorded interview, but then you will be able to be back on with us and hear the questions and answers portion. So we're going to get started with that video right now. Bill, if you could start, that would be great.
Welcome to MS Neuro TV, presented by MS Views and News. MS Neuro TV is a comprehensive educational program bringing together MS professionals from across the United States covering the topics that you want to learn more about. To register for MS Neuro TV webinars, visit www.msviewsandnews.org. Thank you. We hope you enjoy the program.
Hi everybody, my name is Stuart Schlossman and I'm here from MS Views and News, and we're here today with Brian Stein Go, an MS neurologist from Sunrise, Florida. We're going to be speaking about young adults living with multiple sclerosis and having a discussion on the emotional, social, and physical aspects. So I have a few questions for you, and one of which is, today young adults living with MS are faced with negotiating a busy world, including family life, employment, dating, and relationships. Can you share with our audience what you feel are the greatest challenges for a young adult living with MS?
Can you define for me what you mean by young adults?
Under 30.
Under 30, okay. So MS typically is a disease that starts out in people between the ages of about 20 to 40 to 50. It is typically a disease of younger adults. But you're picking a specific group, we're going to talk about even the younger adult with MS. So what they're faced with then first is the diagnosis, dealing with the diagnosis. And the problem with that is that this diagnosis is a condition that could be a lifelong condition. So we have to get people ready to deal with something that they may have to deal with for many years. So this is one aspect of it. A second aspect of it is that in the young age that you're talking about, 20 to 30 maybe, that age is when people are starting to establish their lives. They're completing college, they're starting to work, they're looking forward to starting their careers. They might be getting married and having children and starting families. So at the stage when they're in the time when they're starting families, thinking of working, this disease comes along and changes their potential path of life. And so this is the reality of what we have to talk to people about.
Socially, how do you get a person who is just newly diagnosed under 30 to understand their illness and to be able to maybe communicate this with their friends or with their family?
The first important thing is the huge difference in MS now from what MS was in the past. So in the past, the diagnosis of MS really had very severe connotations. And it's still potentially a severe disease, but the difference is now we have many medications for MS. We have only had drugs for MS for about 25 years. And so now we can do a lot to modify the course of the disease. So the first thing I tell someone is don't look at what you read about in what used to happen with this disease. We have a whole lot more that we can do about the disease, and it's constant. Even this year we've had 3 new drugs approved. So we have a lot of options, a lot of medications that we can give for people with MS to treat the disease itself. In addition to that, we understand very well the importance of treating symptoms, and we can help them manage their symptoms better. And finally, we understand the importance of their general wellness and can educate them on things like diet and exercise right from the get-go.
So you brought up the word symptoms, and it reminds me, how does a person deal with their moods or the mood swings that they might have, and how also is the cognitive aspect on those with MS, especially those that are under 30?
I mean, both of those are big topics. So if someone has mood problems, potentially concerned about their future, things like depression, we will engage them, educate them, and then may get them as early as possible into support groups. So support groups are very important. The support that someone is surrounded with is very important. There's no doubt that people that have strong family support do better than people that lack support. So as early as possible, we'll try and engage the family and educate the family, just as we educate the individual with MS, try and educate their family as well to what kind of support they do, because there's no doubt, as I said, with good support, people do better. So from the emotional standpoint, for the most part, getting support groups is the primary concern. We may require some counseling. To end at the end of the day, if those things don't work, there are many medications that can be used, but my first step is certainly not the medications. I would try every other step first. Support groups, maybe counseling, being involved, being active physically and mentally. I think those things go a long way to helping the mood and, in fact, cognitive functions as well. People that are more active, both physically and mentally, also do better from a cognitive standpoint.
Great. Thank you for that. So for the patients, though, that are in denial, how do they recognize, that they are struggling, that they are forgetting, that they're not keeping their appointments, that they're having difficulty processing? How do you work with a young adult with these types of symptoms?
I mean, people are individuals and they're very different. Mm-hmm. And some people will get the diagnosis and be very willing to be educated and, keep their appointments and be very active in their disease. Being educated is very important. So programs like what you offer, and other educational programs, so someone understands about their medications, understands about all the other aspects, diet, exercise. So those people are obviously going to do much better. But there are individuals that it's their personality, and you just have to work extra hard with them. There's no formula for that. You make them come for more regular appointments, try and get them more involved with support groups, education. But just like with any disease or any condition, there are people that are involved and there are people that are going to have their head in the sand.
So what kind of strategies might you recommend to that person for them to how they can possibly achieve better attention or ability to process better? Is there anything that that they could work with?
It's just forming good relationships is the most important thing, is good relationships, to stress the importance of compliance. Even with the medications, we know from many studies that people that are on medications don't take their medications regularly. for a variety of reasons. Might be the worst possible reason would be because of lack of insurance, and that's one we can work on. But it could be for other reasons. It could be because they don't feel well, have side effects of the medication. It could be they feel better and so they stop it because they feel better. And it could just be because they get fatigue of taking their medications. So these issues we can address with someone, all the issues of taking their medication, complying, understanding the importance of taking medication. It's education, and we don't always succeed. But we certainly work very hard, try and make that kind of person come back more regularly, so we have a shot at speaking to them and advising them of the importance of compliance.
So a person is diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, but they're not showing physical impairment. They have the invisible symptoms. How does that person communicate this to their family and to their closest friends?
This is a very important group, obviously, invisible symptoms of MS, because many people that have MS look good. You can't tell that they have MS on the outside. Invisible symptom, for example, would be something like fatigue. Someone might feel very fatigued. On the outside, someone looking at them can't judge that they have fatigue and might in fact say, the common thing that someone might say is you're lazy or you're not trying hard, those kind of negative feedback kind of comments. So with people like that, there are in fact booklets. As you know, the National MS Society actually has a book that says, but you look so good. So we give them that and say, take this to all the people around you in your life that, support your life. That could be people at home, your relatives, your friends. It could also be people in your workplace. So try and communicate with them. I think that people that can talk about this more freely do better. When people keep it inside, they basically what they're doing is they're reinforcing the invisible symptom. So it's good to have some communication to say, I have this condition, I'm going to do my best, but I'm tired and fatigued sometimes, I need to rest at times, to explain to people what their problem is. So being more open about it, I think, helps people deal with it, as opposed to shutting down and not talking about the symptoms. So if you keep the invisible symptom invisible, it makes it more difficult for others to realize that there's a problem.
Right. Well, thank you for that. But you brought up an interesting point when you said about the workplace. So now a person with MS, diagnosed with MS, is a young adult, and they have to go to work. And do they or do they not disclose? And if they did disclose, what strategies might you have for them to disclose what they have?
This has changed quite a bit over the years. So there was a time, if you go back years ago, when we had no treatments, if someone had this diagnosis, a potentially very serious diagnosis, and revealed this in the workplace, that other people would think they're going to be a liability and would look for any excuse to release them from work, fire them, release them, do whatever, not treat them well. So this was seen a lot in the past. Now, is it better now? It's much better. People understand that there is this disease and have more compassion. Now, especially in this modern age, and this is the modern age of correctness. I mean, we have correctness across the board, gender correctness, all kinds of gender, racial correctness. Surely we should have disease correctness too. And that if somebody has a condition like this, you understand it and you have some compassion toward it. And so what you have to do, I would generally advise people to say, let's evaluate your workplace and let them know. And then expect some compassion from them, maybe compassion and kindness. I think those are things that are going to help them succeed.
Thank you. So going further with the compassion and the kindness, does a patient say, listen, I get fatigued every day between 12 and 2. Is there any way that I could take a break? I mean, is there a way for them to talk to their employer about that? Or if somebody is usually having to, maybe they work retail and they don't get a chance to sit down much, but they might need that because their legs fatigue on them. What can they possibly say to their employer?
So what they need to do is we need to look at the kind of work they do, and then they may need to detail what kind of adjustments or accommodations are going to help them. And then we certainly can write letters to help them. Of course, some employers are very understanding, and hopefully in this modern age of correctness, there will be more people like that. And we would write a letter and say that, Mr. X would benefit from having a chair to sit down periodically during the course of the day, or to take a break for an hour over lunch. We can write accommodations. As long as people tell us what they need, we can write letters always to help them. So you need them to come forward. We write the letter for them, and then hopefully you have a willing, employer that's going to help them.
Great, thank you. So in other words, there is a way for them to be able to shift their activities, whether it be at work or socially. Is there like a guideline that you have that you can give out to the patients for this, or is it just based on what they come and they bring to you?
Right. So as you know, MS is a very, very unpredictable and variable disease, and different people, are affected in very different ways and have different requirements. So always it's going to be individualized. We're going to say, what do you do, and how can we help? with each individual. I would say this. It's not a generalized thing. There are some people that whatever you do for them, it's not going to work. But for the majority of people, I would say that if you sit with them, work out what they need, try and work it out, try and write some accommodations, and then hope they have a reasonable employer. So for the majority of people, I think we can make some accommodations to help them.
Great, thank you. So we've seen that many of us have MS, and many of us are able to stay very active. How do you explain that to a new patient specifically, or even to those that have been with it for a while? How do you teach them to remain or stay as active as they can? Is there anything that you can give to them as far as a plan to be physically active, and what is it that you would tell them to do?
It goes back to like what I said right at the beginning. Mm-hmm. In other words, that this is a disease that has changed very much from what it used to be, and people can potentially do a lot better now than the opportunities we used to have. And then the next part would be education. It would be, these are the things available to you. These are medications for your disease, medications for your symptoms. Be involved. You're the center of the whole thing. Exercise, good eating, support groups, mental interactions, just putting them in this whole picture of all the things that they can accomplish.
Great. Okay, thank you very much for your time today, and we do welcome the next portion. We're going to have some questions. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I hope that you enjoyed that. And welcome back, Dr. Steingo. I'm glad you're here. And the majority of our questions really seem to revolve around the workplace and what to do in regards to informing your employer. Okay. So I'm going to read you some specifics. Give me just a second here. Someone's asking, when is the best time to communicate to my employer that I have MS? And what is the best way to do this so that I do not lose my job? So there's a lot, and it's kind of a general theme here that people do not want to lose their jobs, and there's fear of disclosing about living with MS. How have you addressed this with your patients? Have you heard any stories that have worked well for people, that haven't worked well for people? What is your recommendations there?
There's no one plan fits all.
Yeah.
As I kind of pointed out earlier during the discussion, this disease is very variable and affects people in a different way. So just to give extreme examples, I have some patients who cannot walk at all.
Right.
And they're in wheelchairs. Fortunately, some cases they can drive with hand controls, but they're cognitively very intact, and so they're able to drive to work and work well, and have employees that accept them, and they work very well. I have, for example, a patient who works in a hardware store who cannot walk, mm-hmm. and he works in a hardware store. And this store, which is a national chain of hardware stores, is very accommodating to him and understanding, and he has to take some time off. He needs assistance to the bathroom, and yet this hardware store where you can go and buy all the supplies for your home, and that gives you a clue to the name of the place with a home in it. Just to tell you, I respect them a lot because they treat him very well. So there's an example of how someone who's quite disabled is treated very well. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I've had people who will announce the diagnosis and immediately they're under pressure. HR is investigating them, they're writing them up, they're saying and having problems. So in general, what we can say is that with physical problems, if you have an accommodating employer, people often can actually continue to work with physical problems, but because you can somehow replace physical problems. For example, someone doesn't walk well, like the man I just quoted. He's in a wheelchair, but he doesn't walk well, but cognitively he's still okay. However, if people have cognitive problems, memory problems, thinking problems, problems with functioning, what we call executive functioning, that is very difficult to manage because then they may tend to make mistakes, and that will quickly come up, before authorities. So overall, I would say that we never should forget the invisible symptom of cognitive problems if people have those. If they're not doing well with cognitive problems, we need to address that early on to see if we can accommodate and help that. Because the commonest reason for a young person to lose employment is cognitive problems. So that is a difficult one to manage. There's no rule as to when to tell tell someone at work when this happens. It depends on the people. For example, I've had someone tell me that they didn't know what to do. They went and they spoke to the CEO or a manager or someone, and that person then opened up and said, well, I have a sister or a relative has MS, and totally was understanding and very after that very accommodating to the person. Then you have other people that say, well, this person is going to be a liability, and write someone up at short notice. So I think everywhere is different. We have to look at all the facts, look at the people involved, look at the job involved, and make it personalized. Just like we try to personalize the treatment for an individual,
right? We
need to try and personalize other aspects of their lifestyle, such as the ability to work, what types of work, when to work, how you incorporate other symptoms into work, fatigue, bathroom needs, things like that. So it's a very complex thing.
So it's really very, very specific to each individual and to each circumstance.
Right. It must be personalized.
Yeah. And also I do have some resources where people can read more about their rights. And hopefully I can get that slide up for everyone in terms of the ADA, and also some other resources where people can find out more information about how to ask for accommodations.
Yes, you're right. So all those accommodations are important. Then there's FMLA, where people can get some time off if they need some time off, certain hours or days to have a rest, take a rest. So there are some other accommodations that can be made.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that information with us. And kind of staying in the same theme of disclosure, there's a couple of questions about dating and relationships. Here, I see the slide now with the resources, so everybody can reference that or take a screenshot of that. So again, we're going back to relationships and dating. Someone is writing, how do I know when it's time to tell the person that I'm dating that I have MS and a chronic lifelong disease?
It's a very difficult one as well, and it's the same kind of answer. It's personalized, and I would say that it's going to work if someone has a very understanding, accommodating partner. And I've certainly seen people that have MS and I've met a new partner, and it's worked out very well. That person is an understanding person and said, I like you, I love you, despite your illness. And then there'll be other people that have waited for what they consider to be the right moment and told the other person, and the relationship just ended there and there. So I think it's also a personalized thing. I don't think there's a formula. I could write down for you, and say there are 5 steps that if you met someone. And let's say, for example, we just said that MS often has invisible symptoms,
right,
and people look very good. And, in my eyes, as an MS practitioner, everybody looks good. And I see them all as people, as individuals. I don't see them as their MS or their handicap or something like that. Oh, he's that person. That's the one who's got MS. That's not who everyone is. Everyone's a person to me. But out there in the public, someone might have had a bad experience with MS, maybe a relative that severe MS, and then one person in a relationship will say that, at what they consider to be the right time, I'm at this point when things, are moving along, I must confess I have MS, and the other person said, no, I've seen what it did to, Uncle Jim, and I can't deal with this, where they might and say, that doesn't make any difference to me. I love you for who you are. And you look good right now, and we're going to be together. And, so I've seen it work both ways. And I think, again, it's one of these things that you try and personalize. Let me say this, that I can somehow, in many cases, we have neurologists and the primary care physicians, the practitioners that someone sees, are able often to judge how outcomes are going to be. Let me give you an example. If someone comes to see me in the office, for example, and I have such examples all the time. I've seen someone as a patient for 2 to 3 years. And we'll always talk. One thing we always talk about in every visit is it's on my question sheet. How's your support? How's your family? How's your support?
Mm-hmm.
And I see people come in and I say, how's your support? And they say, it's good. And I never see the support person ever. I never meet them. I don't meet the spouse. I don't meet the boyfriend or the girlfriend or the wife. I don't meet anybody that's coming for support. This to me is a bad sign. But when I see somebody come in with someone and, hold their hand literally, come in with them, ask questions, be involved, that usually, again, there's no fast rule, but that usually is a good sign. So if someone's giving support, the support needs to be, wholehearted support.
Yeah.
I can have telltale signs when I see someone. For example, I asked someone the other day about how was support, and they said, "Oh, it's good," and then burst into tears. And, the light changed at that moment, changed color from green to red. So we can tell a lot of things, and therefore that could be a time to intervene and say maybe you need some counseling, maybe you need to speak to somebody, a psychologist, and things that need to help to try and help with relationships. But there are many clues in relationships that if people are open with their doctors, especially if they have chronic conditions like MS, and you have physicians who deal with chronic diseases, we can tell a lot by what you tell us. So if people who are more open, generally we can help more if someone's more open. And so, it doesn't sound good. To me, I might not say that right away to someone, but I know where it's going, and I would therefore can try and offer help or offer resources like what you're showing on the screen and others like that.
Yeah. So really being candid about your relationships and where they're going and how they're working for you or maybe not working for you, and the possibility of really considering working with a professional, a mental health professional to get you through a point and to get you where you need to go to be in a healthy relationship is something very important to consider, it sounds like.
It is, and there's many things that can be done in many ways of involvement. There can be, I think the important involvement that I always look at is involvement with family, involvement with friends, but also involvement with self, taking care of oneself, if someone can. Now, clearly, again, there are some people that are really, quite disabled and can't do very much and require a lot of help. It's a different situation. We have to find community resources and other ways of helping them. But for many other people, there's things they can do that will definitely help their mental well-being. This could include joining a volunteer group, going to a support group, getting involved in different ways, because having some sense of activities and a sense of purpose is very important.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to shift a little bit into women and childbearing years. I have a question. I'd love to hear your opinion on Ocrevus and conception for young women. How long after an infusion should you wait to try to get pregnant?
Pregnancy in MS is a huge question because a lot of the patients with MS, as I said earlier, MS often is a disease that starts between 20 years to 45 years, let's say approximately, and it's more common in females than males. My ratio probably is 3 to 1 these days, so this is a common issue we have to deal with. And there was a time, of course, in the good old days, not so good, when they used to say to a woman of childbearing age, you shouldn't have children because you've got pregnancy and similar nonsense. And nowadays we would say for most women, we would want them to try, by virtue of our management of their disease and their symptoms, of having as normal a life as possible. And certainly, encouraging them to have whatever family they want. And each drug has its own recommendations. So if you look up each drug in the prescribing information of a drug, it's going to tell you wait X amount of time. So for example, for Ocrevus, it might say, if you've had an infusion of Ocrevus, then you may be likely to wait about 6 months before you would plan to go ahead with family plans.
Mm-hmm.
As an example, and each drug has different recommendations. All the drugs have some pregnancy registries, so someone does fall pregnant on the drug, or at the opportune time it can be recorded to see if what fetal outcomes are like, whether there's going to be good fetal outcomes. So each drug has pregnancy registries as well, and we have advice for each of the drugs as to what people should do. For most drugs with MS, in fact, for all drugs, we advise women to practice contraception. The one drug that has been tested through pregnancy is Copaxone, but other drugs have been used during pregnancy. For example, Tysabri is used in the first trimester of pregnancy. But in general, we would say practice contraception, and then at the time when a family is planned, different drugs have different time washout or waiting until pregnancy is ready.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, and definitely a conversation to have with your neurologist, I'm sure. Talking about stress, can you share with us what stress can actually do to a person living with MS? And how do you recommend controlling stress?
Yeah, so MS is an autoimmune disease. It is a condition in which the immune system really is the primary disease system, and the immune system that normally should protect us against disease and against foreign bodies and foreign infections goes wrong. And instead of protecting us, it attacks us. It doesn't recognize our own part, and in the case of MS, the immune system reacts against our central nervous system. So it's the immune system that's a problem, and the immune system is sensitive to stress. If someone's under stress, then all autoimmune diseases can be worse. And in fact, most diseases, heart disease and other diseases, when someone's under stress, the immune system is stressed out as well. So the effect of stress is really to activate the immune system. And that in turn, the immune system is diseased and will aggravate the underlying disease. So stress management obviously is also very important. Stress management is many things, which we've talked to before. You hear these recurrent things about how to deal with stuff. So hopefully the disease is under somewhat good control with the disease-modifying drug which we've chosen. But then there's all the other things, and that's managing the symptoms and managing self. Managing self means eating well, having the appropriate diet, exercising, having good management of emotions, and if there are emotional issues, to seek the help to deal with those. So those factors all together. It's the whole thing that you've heard me say before about every aspect: managing mental health, physical health, diet, exercise.
And can you share with us, somebody's asking, how much do you actually sleep? This person is saying they feel tired all the time. They can sleep a whole lot. So what's the recommendation when all you really feel like doing is sleeping?
There's a tremendous, this is again a very complex question. And why is that? That is because sleep is not a straightforward issue. What causes people with MS to have poor sleep? Number one, they could just have a sleep disorder like anybody could have. So if they have a primary sleep disorder, we have to learn how to manage that. It could be that they have sleep apnea. In fact, some studies have shown that sleep apnea is more common in people with MS, and we might need to do a sleep study on someone, especially if there's some snoring going on. Maybe a sleep study will help them. So they could have a primary sleep disorder associated with their MS. But people with MS have trouble sleeping for many other reasons. Let's think of some. They have bladder problems. So the bladder problems keep them up at night. They're up frequently to urinate. Well, that disturbs your sleep quite a lot. How about they have pain? They have muscle spasms and they have pain. They could have depression that could affect their sleep. So therefore, when someone with MS has a sleep problem, we need to evaluate it and not just say, well, you have a sleep problem, here's sleep medication, and that'll help you. We need to say, what is the problem? For example, if it's a bladder problem, then we give them bladder medications that might help them. They may sleep better and feel more refreshed the following day. So in terms of the number of hours of sleep, of course, people have differences. And on average, most people would say someone would need about 7 hours. They would say that people that have 4 or 5 hours could have problems, including memory problems, concentration problems. Some studies show that too much sleep is no good. So I don't think it's well established, but probably 7 hours is, for most people, in my opinion, a good amount of sleep. Now, if it's disturbed sleep, it's obviously not as good as 7 straight hours. So we have to look into it, like I said, evaluate the sleep, why you're having sleep problems, and try and treat what's at the root of causing the sleep problem. Of course, if someone doesn't sleep well, then they're fatigued the next day.
Right. So
similarly, if someone complains of fatigue, we have to say, why are you fatigued? And we know that MS fatigue is a serious and common and disabling symptom. So if someone has primary MS fatigue, just fatigue from MS, then we have to address that, and we have some medications for that. But again, it's going to look for secondary causes. Is there some other cause for the fatigue? Did they not sleep well? Are they taking a medication, and why didn't they sleep well? One of those conditions we spoke about. Are they taking a medication that makes them sleepy? For example, an antidepressant medication. Are they depressed? So there could be many things that both interact with both sleep and fatigue, and these causes of these two conditions, sleep and fatigue, which are quite intertwined. And the causes for this can be primary causes, where it's related directly to the MS, or secondary causes. And it's always very important to rule out the secondary causes. To give someone a sleep medication and then 3 months later say, well, really, it's your bladder, let's treat your bladder, you've wasted some time not treating the appropriate cause.
Okay. And if it was a primary direct response of the MS, can you share with the audience what the medications would be to help with the fatigue?
Well, for fatigue, we start out, so let's say it's primary, we've ruled out, very important, I'm stressing again, we've ruled out all the secondary causes. And so oftentimes the go-to first medication is a medication called amantadine. Amantadine is an old medication that was originally had some antiviral properties and were used to treat certain strains of flu. And then was subsequently found to help other conditions, like, for example, it's also used for Parkinson's disease. And for Parkinson's disease, different formulations, including a long-acting amantadine, for example, are used. For MS, the typical dose of amantadine that does help fatigue is 2 tablets a day. And it's generally very well tolerated. Sometimes can cause a skin rash. There are some other side effects listed, but they are really quite rare. It's usually very well tolerated. But that's always our first medication that we start with. If that doesn't work, then oftentimes we're going to go and look at that in terms of medications. We look at stimulants. Now, of course, we're going to look at fatigue as one of the other ways to try and manage the fatigue. In other ways, for example, change a schedule. We might say, okay, your fatigue comes on at a certain time. That might be the time when there's no harm in taking a nap if we can. If someone's working, it's different. I've had patients at work who've taken a break and gone to sleep in their car for half an hour. Or even an office somewhere if they have understanding co-workers, being able to sleep in a side office or something like that. So if someone can take a short nap during the day and that replenishes them, and they don't need medications, that's fine. If we can do some physical or time adjustments and avoid medications, that'd be great. But if we need medications, then amantadine is commonly a first start, and after that, we would use stimulants. There are people that do not like using stimulants, like Ritalin and Adderall. They just don't like using those medications. But at the end of the day, for me, I want to be cautious. But at the same time, a person's quality of life is very important. And if a stimulant does help them, I'm going to say, let's read the side effects of what they could cause. They certainly have, a good deal of side effects. We're going to evaluate the side effects and weigh up the pros and cons and say, okay, these are the side effects. We'll start low. We'll see how you manage it. Make sure there's no side effects, no contraindications, and then proceed.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And I'm going to close with one last question, or more of a statement, and maybe you can share some things about this. Someone is saying the one thing I have to get used to was understanding or redefining my limits and knowing that no 2 days are the same, where I can do something one day, the next day I might not be able to do that thing. And I just wanted to see, if you could share with our audience how the fluctuation of the day-to-day in living with MS.
This was a common report of patients, because people have good and bad days very commonly. And sometimes when if they're early in their course and they're having a bad day, they could think it's a relapse, for example. And the way I explain it to most people is that the symptoms of MS are not a straight line. It's not like you have the same thing absolutely all the time, and it never changes. The symptoms actually fall between a range, whatever the symptoms are, whether it's fatigue or spasticity or weakness or other symptoms. They fall between a range. And so what I do is I'll draw 2 lines. So imagine 2 parallel lines, one on top of the other, and they're 2 inches apart. And in between them, you'll draw a wave pattern, and the waves going up and going down represent good days and bad days. So all the time with people with MS, there are good days and bad days. And sometimes there could be a reason for a bad day. It could be stress. It could be any kind of stress. Turn on TV and you'll see stress.
Yeah.
So it could be something like that can affect someone. It could be family stress. One of our families can cause stress. There could be many reasons for stress. Or it could just be the MS varying, as it does. It's typical for the disease that there can be variation, good and bad days. And as long as there's a certain range of symptoms which someone comes to indicate someone comes to understand their own set of symptoms over time, I say, this is what we have to deal with and find ways of dealing with it. If there's a day of more fatigue, you may need an extra nap. If there's a day of other symptoms, you may need to deal with them accordingly. This we have to deal with all the time. If the symptoms go outside of that range, I told you to draw the 2 parallel lines and place the symptoms between the 2 parallel lines. If the symptoms go outside of the parallel lines and stay there for 24 hours, this then would indicate that there's a relapse going on. So we would have to manage that differently. So when people have good and bad days, a very bad day could be an indication that there may be a relapse. But good and bad days are happening commonly, just the nature of the disease. They do happen.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Dr. Steingo. We appreciate all of your information and sharing your expertise with us and answering all of our questions. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome anytime.
Okay, great. And what we're going to do now, I'm just going to give you some closing statements. And next month, I want to share with you that we will be talking with Connie Easterling, who is an MS certified nurse, and she's going to be discussing all the things that we know today about MS progression, including updates and new information. So we hope that you join us next month. We just hope that you can join us. If you are registered already, you don't have to do anything. You will be able to get your emails and just join us on next month. All MS Neuro TV webinars, including tonight, will be recorded and can be found on our YouTube Learning channel. Make sure that you subscribe, so every time we release a new video, you will get an alert so you can share and watch the videos that we post. And please make sure to register to MS Views and News. You will receive notifications of free educational events coming to towns near you. Plus, you can receive our newsletter, and you can do that signing up at www.msviewsandnews.org. And please be sure to try to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you liked the webinar tonight, we'd love to hear your feedback. Please, you'll receive a quick survey. If you could fill out that survey, I'd love to hear anything that you would like to share with us, any ideas for the future. Would really welcome to your ideas and to reading what you've got to say. And again, we'd like to thank our supporters, Sanofi, Genzyme, Celgene, and Novartis. And thank you all for joining us tonight. I'm glad you hung in there. Thank you. See you next month. Okay, good night, guys.